Nobody Wants to Die has a concept that's easy to understand. Think of this game as an interesting cocktail where you get Altered Carbon, or I guess Cyberpunk 2077, blended with a bit of Bioshock, and topped off with a noir style detective story set in a very bleak future of New York City. In this world, humanity found out how to essentially become immortal through a substance called Icarite, which allows people to transfer their consciousness to another body. So it's basically like Soma, but a little less fucked up, I think. It sounds good, but like any good thing in life, we introduce greed into it and now stuff's kind of messed up. As people are government mandated to bid at an auction house for a new body, and by the age of 21, they'll need to pay a subscription for their own bodies. So if you're already uncomfortable with Ubisoft's idea of game ownership, wait till you see it applied to your own body. Is it an interesting concept? Oh yes it is. Is it also kind of depressing? You bet your life on it. So it's definitely bleak, but man does this game make bleak look beautiful somehow. The devs seem to have taken a lot of inspiration from Bioshock because even though this is supposed to be New York, if you've taken a quick photo and told me it was Rapture or Columbia at night or something, I would definitely believe you. Nonetheless, the city and the crime scenes look really good. We have the usual neon infrastructure and the whole mid 1900s tech mixed with futuristic stuff, and they were designed really well. Like, you still have drive-in movies, but also you have flying cars here. I also like how you get an opportunity to see Manhattan from a bird's eye view, which makes you think that this world looks pretty cool, but then you also get to explore some of the areas on foot and see firsthand the darkness that envelops this neon-lit dystopia. In terms of narrative, you have James Kara, a cop who just recently got put into a new body after his old one had gotten killed in the line of duty. James is experienced, but his unconventional methods and penchant for disobeying orders makes him a wild card in the police chief's eyes. But he was allowed a chance to do some work again off the books to help with a case, and gets partnered with a liaison named Sarah who assists him remotely over an earpiece. The seemingly simple case twists into a deep conspiracy involving the government, police, and possibly other key members of society, and James commits himself into finding the truth. All while his deceased wife pops in and out of his dreams and field of view, giving us a glimpse on how James is coping with her passing, kinda like Leonardo DiCaprio in Inception. The story isn't something we haven't seen before, but it is told here very beautifully and with a lot of depth, which I found pretty remarkable for a game that's only 4 or 5 hours long. Now, alright, I got a little bit of flack in my hashtag blood video for saying that 10 to 12 hours is kinda short. I still stand by that because it is objectively short relative to the average game length. But I hope we can now all agree that 5 hours is definitely on the shorter side, so please don't fight me on this. The narrative was really well written and takes a very good show don't tell approach to pack in more lore and world building, and my god is this world really interesting. I mentioned that the world was bleak, and we know this because the game takes time to emphasize this, and also to emphasize how certain things in our world are no longer present in this future. But I like how I learned about these naturally through the dialogue, without any kind of long exposition, and through the world by interacting with the environment and piecing together lore that I randomly picked up. Like, for example, I learned how chocolate is now considered a rare commodity in this world, and I found that out while investigating around the crime scene, through an optional interaction that I could have easily missed had I stuck to the regular investigation. Apartments here are all so densely packed and small that it's hard to have any real sunlight, so you can have your apartment make artificial landscapes to mask the dreary view outside your window. Even the more abstract stuff like social structures are discovered through environmental storytelling or inferred through dialogue, so you get a better understanding of how the world works and the politics surrounding it. It's random stuff like these that make the world more interesting and in-depth, even if ultimately some of them are not really going to be relevant to the plot. Speaking of plot, you actually get different endings, and this is influenced by decisions and dialogue you make throughout the story and your investigation. The system they use here was pretty cool, It's kind of similar to how the Walking Dead series kind of did it, where you get to decide on certain dialogue or choices, and some of these choices will have an explicit effect on the story outcome. Occasionally, you also experience having locked dialogue, signaling that you did not fulfill the criteria to let you choose these alternative actions. This makes every dialogue choice feel like they matter, and ultimately it allows you to shape James's behavior and relationship with his partner, which will have its own effects on the story. This gives it a lot of replayability because now you get alternative endings, different reactions, additional lore. You can make James reasonable or you can make him an asshole. You can make him commit to sobriety, or at least try to, or you can ramp up his alcoholism. It's kind of like BioWare's Mass Effect style of dialogue and decision making, but a little bit more nuanced and less biased towards the extreme options. It's a cool system to play around with, and I personally like to see this kind of nuance implemented in RPG decision making. Aside from the dialogue and decision trees, the rest of the gameplay was alright. Okay, don't get me wrong, it wasn't bad, but hear me out. I personally found detective games fun because they gave me some freedom to explore, to find evidence, to question people, and to experiment.
You're full of shit, Jacob. The truth is you hated that bitch. You followed her and dragged her into the car and then took her out to the morgue.
Jesus Christ.
Here we have the ability to play back and reconstruct crimes to find and analyze evidence, and I think that's a really cool feature. It just felt a little clunky, and the novelty wears off pretty quickly as well because the mechanics are kind of simple. But mostly what I don't particularly like is how linear it is. You don't really have any avenues to explore or experiment. You just have to follow the predetermined analysis or prompts in crime scenes and watch them play out. You have multiple gadgets like an X-ray or a UV light, but oftentimes as soon as you go to something interactable, the device you need will already be prompted on screen or brought up by Sarah or James. So all you need to do is press X or whatever action button and presto, James already knows what to do. This makes it feel a little too hand-holdy in my opinion, and I feel like they could have just relegated some of those explicit cues to the hint mode, which is a neat feature that they included to guide players on what they have to do next in case you get lost. By doing so, players can figure out for themselves what they need to do, and if they do need a hint, they can just bring up hint mode for it. I also like how after investigations, James will use his apartment floor as an evidence board where you can link together evidence and draw conclusions. Now this is where your mileage might also vary because I think the idea was solid, the execution, not so much. It was a bit confusing at first to figure out how to use the board as you can move the pieces around randomly. Once you figure it out, it's okay, but since the evidence has very sparse details, the way they connected sometimes made very little sense to me. I kind of felt like Ron listening to Harry and Hermione make breakthroughs. I don't know, it could just be my lizard brain or whatever, and so I feel like a case notes or journal tab to track your evidence in James's line of thought would have been useful to keep the player aware of what's going on with the case, as it did take me quite a while to piece together what was happening. And by then, I'd already gotten the bad ending, so womp womp, I guess. But that was my experience. Yours could definitely be different. But if you're looking for some deep detective mechanics, this game is probably not going to scratch that itch, I'm sorry to say. But if you're looking for a short but sweet narrative experience, then definitely check the game out. It's been out for a while, so be sure to pick it up and see what you think about the gameplay and the story. In my opinion though, for its price, its great story, the amazing world with infinite potential when it comes to sequels, I think this game is a pretty good deal. I'm going all in on this Altered Carbon BioShock Kool-Aid, and I'm loving this amazing trend of indie developers creating short but amazing narrative experiences for games. I hope to see more from the developers' critical hit games, because if they just polish the investigation gameplay a little bit, this can turn into a pretty good franchise, as there are so many stories that could be told, as many mysteries about this world are yet to be uncovered. But hey, let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you love or hate the game down in the comments. Like and subscribe if you like what you see, as it helps me out a lot. This is Cy from the Fireplace, and I'll catch you in the next video.